Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a comparison video. Actually, this has been a long time coming because this is a fragrance that I've owned 2 bottles of that we're going to discuss. And the fragrance we're going to compare it to is actually on my unicorn sort of Hall of Fame sniff list that I've wanted to smell forever and ever and ever. So today we're going to compare the 2000 version of Creed Tabarome, which this is my second bottle. And you can see I went through one. This is my second one. I love this fragrance for the summer. We'll talk a little bit about why here in a little bit. And then we're going to talk about the 1875. Yes, Creed says 1875, which is just like, right. Tabarome, vintage Tabarome. Somebody very kindly sent me a couple of very precious drops, and I've been wearing it and comparing it. And I've got the 2000 version from here, and I have the 1875 version right here. And we're going to do kind of a comparison video. So, first of all, my original plan was to review these 2 fragrances separately, okay? But sometimes the perfumes themselves have other plans because the reality is that these 2 perfumes surprisingly sort of twist around each other like some sort of a braid or something. You know, imagine like those old Viking braids where the braids are like the size of your arm, you know? Those big fat interwoven braids, and it just looks amazing on a Viking woman or something. But just imagine this tapestry of like weaving in and out like a braid. You know, that's how these 2 fragrances kind of present themselves to me. I was expecting 2 completely different scents. By the way, people talk about the vintage Tabarome versus the Tabarome Millésime, but the fact is that interweaving in and out of each other just cannot be overlooked. Okay, so these 2 fragrances share some interesting similarities. But first, some background. Okay, so as I said, the original, what we'll call vintage Tabarome, is said to have been released in 1875, which is just... but from the time I got into the hobby, it has been one of my holy grail fragrances that I've wanted to smell, okay? You could only find it in a flacon. It did not come in bottles at all with the sprayer like this. It was only issued in a flacon. And there was some sort of what Creed called a limited re-release from the year 2008 or so. Now, I have a sinking feeling that that was the only release because I haven't seen like Tabarome fragrances from like, 30, 40, 50 years ago or anything like that. I've only seen the re-release bottles. So if anyone knows differently, do let me know. But I have a sneaking suspicion that that is one of the only releases. And it came with a pretty badass atomizer. If you go to Parfumo, type in vintage Tabarome, you'll pull it up. It had the Creed sort of triple plume crest embossed all over it with that brown sort of Tabarome gray. It was a badass atomizer, I'll tell you that. And I've seen bottles of vintage Tabarome show up on eBay for something like $10,000 to $30,000. Yes, $10,000 to $30,000. And guess what? It sells every single time. It's a rare beast. Even the rare chance it actually does show up on eBay. And Creed marketed it as, you know what's coming, Winston Churchill's signature scent. Of course, there's nobody that's going to argue that because Churchill and his whole family have long since sort of passed out of the ability to, I guess, call Creed and say, stop marketing it towards Winston Churchill. But yeah, that's what they said. They said it was Winston Churchill's signature scent. So who knows if that's true or not, but that's what Creed used to say back in the day. Now, it's an easy connection to make because obviously the cigar connection and, the story created around the scent by Creed. Whereas the more modern Tabarome was released in the year 2000. Okay, this one right here. This is the one you can still buy. This is still available, still produced by Creed right now. Marketed, well, Caring Beauty now owns Creed, but still Creed is still producing the scent. And they marketed it as Tabarome Millésime, okay? So Tabarome Millésime, and this Millésime right here is something that Creed was really big into at the turn of the century. It basically is a French word meaning like the best of the year's crops, right? So if you have like a certain crop, the absolute best of that crop was Millésime. And this is big in like winemaking. So if you ever, look up Dom Perignon or something like that, they make a big deal out of the fact they only use Millésime grapes, and if the crop isn't good enough this year, well, then we just won't make any wine that year. That's kind of the marketing that Dom Perignon uses. And so Creed kind of copied a little bit of that wine making mentality into fragrances. Okay, it's actually a really smart move on their part, marketing wise. Creed is a genius, I'll tell you that. Everything else is a lot. If you've ever read The Ghost Perfumer, you'll know there's a lot of very shady stuff that goes on, and the fact that he was not sued for that book just tells you that what was said obviously was looked over and re-looked over, because if it was a lie, he clearly would have been sued for slander. But anyways, so even though these are different fragrances, hands down, they're different fragrances, there's no getting around it, they go about trying to build the same type of fragrance, the same fragrance profile, if you will, but they go about doing it differently. They build their sandcastles differently, but they're both building sandcastles, okay? So this is the part that I think threw me off. As many folks, when I would talk to people who have experience with vintage Tabarome, okay, they would talk about it as if it was like a completely different scent. And that's what I expected. So first time I smelled it, I expected something that was going to be out of this world different from the Tabarome Millésime. And yes, they are different, but they also have some very important similarities, which we have to discuss. So let's talk about the one that I have a huge amount of experience with first. This one right here, the Tabarome Millésime. This little thing keeps coming off, so I'm just going to take it off because it's bothering me. So we'll have a naked little atomizer, or a little sample right there. So Creed Tabarome Millésime, this one right here. This is the one that I have a huge amount of experience with because I went through one entire bottle. This is the second bottle. This is actually a 2013 batch for you Creed batch lovers. This is batch number 13P01, okay? So this is a 2013 batch, so long before Creed sold out to BlackRock, and then BlackRock sold it to Caring Beauty. So my gut tells me, and I don't have any proof of this, this is me guessing. It's not listed on any of the databases as far as I'm aware, but my gut tells me this is a Pierre Bourdon creation, okay? Just from what I know about his creations and some of the notes that are used in here and the style of the fragrance, the way it wears, really makes me feel that Pierre Bourdon created this. So Tabarome Millésime basically opens up with exactly what you would not expect to get in a tobacco scent, okay? Basically what it does is it opens up with a lot of very bright, effervescent, uplifting, fresh citrus notes, which is actually exactly what Creed is known for. So you get this very prominent ginger note the second you spray. And I just sprayed before the video, so I should have waited. Everyone keeps telling me you got to spray on camera, Ramsey, but I keep forgetting, and I sprayed before the video. But the ginger here is like especially sort of zingy, you know? It's got this fresh zinginess to it, this zing. As if it's adding this like new awakening, you know? And I'm reminded of the life cycle of a tobacco plant in the soil, because being planted on a bright and sunny day, but being like harvested on maybe like a darker or cloudier day, not cold, because tobacco cannot do cold. If it freezes while the tobacco plants are in their life cycle, they will die. And tobacco plants need about 90 to 120 days of like non-freezing weather, basically. They don't do well in the cold, but this fragrance feels like it starts on a very bright, warm, sweaty day, but it ends on maybe a slightly cooler, cloudy day, right? And so Tabarome Millésime, the first thing you're going to notice is not the tobacco, which is what most people are expecting, but that's not what you get from the very beginning. What you get is citrus, and a lot of citrus, which, to be fair, like I said, that is like Creed's calling card, okay? So it makes a lot of sense that you get a lot of citrus up front. Now, you're going to notice the ginger, you're going to notice grapefruit, you're going to notice pink pepper, which gives it a very slight mass appealing feel, if you will. And you're going to notice a very prominent note of mandarin orange. Okay, so you can see all these citruses, right? Mandarin orange, the grapefruit, the ginger, and lots of invigorating notes, lots of fresh, effervescent, invigorating type notes that would probably feel pretty good cooling you off on a very, very hot day. The first time you smell the tobacco, it comes into the fragrance probably about 10 to 15 minutes in. It feels very, very tart, very green, very fresh. That's how the tobacco note comes to you. It's a very green, alive tobacco, okay? It's not a tobacco that's been chopped down and cured and hung and all that stuff, okay? So the tobacco here feels as if it's starting out like a sapling, you know? Like first you get the seeds are germinating, the tobacco is pushing through the soil, the tobacco is very green and moist. youthful, and it feels like it's sort of mixing with those fresher top notes in a way that makes it, in my opinion, a perfect tobacco fragrance for the warmer weather. Okay, so in fact, like I said, one of the reasons this is my second bottle is that when I am craving a tobacco scent in the summer, this is one of my go-to warm weather tobacco scents. Now, it's actually January 4th today, but we're going to get all the way up to 60 here in Texas. Mildish, warmish weather. You could go out without a coat kind of thing. And so if you're craving something that is not like a heavy amber or something like that in winter, this also works really well. So it works well sometimes when you want to break from the heavier fragrances in winter, and it works well in the summer. So I tend to wear it a lot. And which, to be fair, summer here in Texas is like 9 months out of the year, you know, so it's kind of one of those things. I reach for it a lot. And it works brilliantly in the heat, right? So there is also a note of tea in here. Now, Pierre Bourdon was on a tea kick in the late 90s, early 2000s. He made things like Silver Mountain Water, which I reviewed on the channel, adds a beautiful tea note in there. And there's actually a tea note in here. I don't get so much of the tea. Maybe just a little bit of this herbal freshness you could sort of imagine, if you will, but I don't get like a hardcore tea note, you know what I mean? So what threw me off with vintage Tabarome, so going to the very precious few drops of vintage, is most folks told me this is much more a manly, hardcore tobacco fragrance, Ramsey. And while they might be right in one sense, in another sense, they're wrong, right? And vintage Tabarome opens up with a very similar style opening, but it doesn't have the ginger. So it doesn't have the ginger. Instead, it focuses on one of Creed's mainstays, which is bergamot. And the bergamot is mixed with some unlisted floral notes to my nose. Like I sort of get this almost like what I would say is like this classic men's aftershave, right? Think of like classic men's aftershave feels, you know? Another fragrance that slightly came to mind is Mauer and Wirtz Tabak, okay? Something like this, or even something that has this, what I would call this old school masculine, and not old school going back to the 80s or 90s, old school going back to like the 50s or 60s, okay? So this old school 1960s style cologne. Imagine something like Monsieur Rochas. I decanted it into this bottle because the Monsieur Rochas bottle that Rich Mitch sent me, which is right here. Oh, okay. So Monsieur Rochas Rich Mitch sent me. The atomizer was not working properly, so I had to take it out. But here's the bottle. You know, something like this, Monsieur Rochas. If you have ever smelled some of these old school, and I mean really old school, right? Like 1960s old school masculine fragrances where they're very cologne heavy, very citrusy heavy, and they were made for a time when men weren't supposed to wear fragrance, you know? A man didn't want someone smelling a perfume on him, right? And men also didn't spray perfume back in the day. They splashed it on, or they splashed aftershave on. You know what I mean? You slap yourself with it, right? That's the kind of feeling, this old school feeling is what you get from vintage Tabarome. And instantly, there is this very, but along with that old school masculine, there is this strange combination of floral in here, which the floral connection, the floral concoction, I would guess is probably some sort of a mixture of like carnation, remember old school, and jasmine, something like that, some maybe jasmine sambac or something like that. And so even though the tobacco enters the arena much sooner, and it enters the arena already sort of ready to smoke and cured and dried and chopped and brown. Those are the things that come to mind in vintage Tabarome right from the beginning. I have to say, think of like the tobacco at the end of a cigarette, right? That chopped tobacco, very finely tuned chopped tobacco. However, I have to say I'm very disappointed in vintage Tabarome. Have you ever had a fragrance that you so hyped up in your head because of what other people said it would smell like, that you almost turned it into this unicorn? That was this fragrance for me. So now that I'm finally getting a chance to smell it, I'm almost like, meh. I mean, it's okay. I would wear it. It's not like it's bad. It's not so bad I wouldn't wear it, but it's not the mythical unicorn 10 grand a bottle, you know, type fragrance that I built up in my mind. It doesn't live up anywhere near to the hype. Let's put it that way. Or the holy grail status that I sort of placed on it or equated to it in my mind. In fact, I would go so far as to say I'm just as happy with Tabarome Millésime. I'm just as happy with this one. Now, to be fair, I do like vintage Tabarome more the second time that I'm smelling it. The first time I tried it, I was very, very disappointed. And I like it more as a direct comparison where I can kind of smell because I think it's easier to kind of pick out some of the differences, if you will, than it is just going off of memory. But this is not the Grail fragrance that I made it out to be, in my opinion. To be fair, the tobacco has this sort of contrast of being both like deep and rich and yet also sparkly and fresh in vintage Tabarome right out of the gate. Whereas with Tabarome Millésime, you have to wait for that brown tobacco to come later on. It starts off green, as I said, with lots of the ginger and citruses, so you do get a little bit more of that very manly, fresh tobacco right from the get-go. And I think what ends up happening in vintage Tabarome is that the ambergris plays a bigger role. Now, ambergris is a very expensive ingredient. It would not surprise me one bit if Creed was still using real ambergris in 2008 or whenever this flacon bottle was re-released. And so the ambergris here comes across as very sour and more animalic than the ambergris in the Tabarome Millésime version from 2000. I think this also has ambergris in it, to be fair. But I think in the vintage version, it has more of that dirty, briny, animalic, gray amber type vibe in the vintage compared to the more modern version. But that floral sort of men's aftershave, like imagine mixing ingredients like moss and sage and stuff like that, like a classic aftershave. It never really leaves vintage Tabarome for me. And although later into the dry down, there is a leather, and you guys know I'm a leather lover through and through, so there is a leather that makes itself known. Probably 2-3 hours in, this old, I don't want to use the word desiccated, but like, ancient leather feels like you're sitting in like an old dining car, of a train or something like that. I could literally picture Winston Churchill in his brown trench coat, riding some old ass train in England, smoking his big ass stogie, reading the newspaper about the latest escapades in World War II. And even though it has these little touches of things that I like, the strange sour ambergris, the sort of more quickly emerging brown tobacco, the leather into the dry down, I still would not rave or rant about this. I think most of the folks who have this and go crazy for it probably like the fact that it's kind of one of those rare pieces no one has in their collection. They're more in love with the rarity than they are the smell of the fragrance, I would guess. There's no way in hell I would pay 10 grand for this. Forget 20 or 30. There's no way I would pay $1,000, I don't think. I might pay a couple $100 just to have it in the collection because it's kind of one of those cool treasure pieces, like you can be like a dragon hoarding your treasure. Ha, no one has this piece but me. But it's kind of one of those things, it's like it's just one of those rare items that I think people find cooler because of the rarity than the actual fragrance itself, from what I'm smelling here. So that's kind of my take on it. Now, if you're interested in learning about some of the other tobacco fragrances in my collection, I have done a This Is Not a Top 10 tobacco. You can check it out. You can go see some of the other tobaccos in my collection, which I easily would just as happily wear as this. Now, the other part of the equation is that if you wait, if you are patient, Tabarome Millésime kind of does something that makes vintage Tabarome, I don't want to say obsolete, but it would make it a lot harder for me to spend the money on something like this. And that is that if you're patient, Tabarome Millésime starts to sort of change and morph into the dry down. So that green sapling tobacco that I was mentioning at the beginning, it's replaced. And into the dry down, it becomes 3-4 hours in. Already, actually, I sprayed it, I don't know, an hour ago or so. But already, it's starting to turn into that very fine chopped tobacco. And it's actually the modern that brings in a Creed staple. And it sort of brings in something in spades that Creed is very well known for. And that is one of their calling cards. It's very creamy, very likable sandalwood, okay? That Creed does so well. Now, who knows if it's real sandalwood or some sort of sandalwood accord? I don't care. Whatever the sandalwood note that Pierre Bourdon was most likely using in here is very, very Creed-like. You smell it in a lot of Creed fragrances. The note listing says the vintage and this one has this sandalwood note. But for me, the sandalwood note is actually more prominent in Tabarome Millésime. Whereas in the vintage, you start getting a little bit more of that brown trench coat, brown leather kind of thing, you know? Where the tobacco and sandalwood, once that 2 to 3 hours pass in Tabarome Millésime, is just glorious. That sandalwood tobacco combination is absolutely lovely here. So to be fair, I like them both. I would wear vintage Tabarome if a bottle just fell in my lap. But in a world of limited resources, there's no way in hell I would spend my own money on this. I'll tell you that right now. No way in hell. It's a shame, you know, because I considered this a unicorn for so long, but the unicorn is now struck off of the list, okay? So, all right, so I didn't want to do it at the beginning, but I did want to just show you guys. A box came in. I took everything out and cataloged it already. So there won't be really like me taking stuff out of the box, but I did want to just share with you guys. So we'll call it a quick unboxing at the end. There's actually a couple things to whoever sent this to me. I need to get in touch with you because there's a couple things I have no idea what they are. Like for example, there is a badass 5mm atomizer from Max Aroma of a Fragrance du Bois, but it doesn't say which one. So I have no clue what this is. But let me show you this atomizer. This is probably one of the best atomizers in my collection. Look, it's got this leather thing on it. Pretty nice. A 5mm of a Fragrance du Bois. I have no clue what it is. So I'll have to get in touch with the fragrance god person. I don't know if he wants to be outed or not. So I'm going to just keep it as fragrance god person for now. There was also a Argos fragrance that he sent me in this little holder right here with the Argos eye. I've reviewed a couple on the channel, by the way. I was expecting to hate this niche house, and I don't hate them, surprisingly. At least not what I smelled. But I have no clue what this is. Another one where there's a lot of juice in here, but I have no clue what it is. So I have to get in touch with who sent this to me and see what these two are. The other ones are I'm able to actually tell you what they are. So there is a roller edition. It's like maybe 5mm or something from a house called Thomas de Monaco Parfums, which I reviewed one of their fragrances on the channel, one of their most popular from back in the day. You can check it out. This one's called Au Coeur. And Au Coeur is Magnolia Oil, Osmanthus Absolute, Pink Pepper, Rose Maroc Absolute, Virginia Cedarwood, Oakwood, Tonka Bean Absolute, Musk, and Ambroxan. Radiant Extrait de Parfum, an intense encounter with blooming splendor, straight from the heart, desiring love. Now, so there's Thomas de Monaco's little symbol there. So I don't know if anyone has any experience with this. I don't. I have no clue about it, so I'll have to give this a test. And he sent me a sample from a brand I've never tried before called Les Eaux Primordials. I think it's Primordials. This is from their Super Fluid collection. This is called Encens. And let's see if I can pull up the note listing really quick. Primordials Encens. Probably can't spell. Les Eaux. I cannot spell. Primordials Encens. There we go. Frankincense, dodecanol, which is a fragrance ingredient within the group of aldehydes. Labdanum, castoreum, oud, and leather. Amélie Bourgeois and Arnaud Poulain are the two perfumers. I've heard of this brand, Les Eaux Primordials, but I don't know anything about them. So if you guys do, let me know. And then there were a couple more. There was Vanille Havane Extrait, which is kind of cool because I've reviewed Vanille Havane and I've reviewed Vanille Havane Cour d'Oud, but the Extrait was left out, so I can get to that one of these days. And then there were a couple from this house of Mendita Rosa, which is actually a house I've been wanting to smell for a long time. One is called Athenor, the other's called Orlo, but they are fragrances that have some pretty cool bottles. The bottles of these Mendita Rosa fragrances are very, very cool. Like weird stone and, yarn wrapped around it and glass and all this crazy stuff on the bottles. And so the designer is Stephanie Squeglia. I hope I pronounced that right. But she was apparently born in Naples and has been into fragrances most of her life. So I'm very curious to smell these because I hear really good things about this, Mendita Rosa brand. So those came in. And then there were a couple of Scents of Wood fragrances. So this one is Mycelium in Chestnut. And this one right here is called Cashmeran in Cognac. So 2 scents of wood fragrances I've never smelled before. So those will be interesting. I think I've reviewed a couple on the channel, or maybe I did a live stream. I can't remember. And then definitely the one with the most fragrances from this little box. And these are 3 ml samples, which already he gets a check mark for the 3 ml sample and the little packaging. I like the little packaging, but these are not lipsticks. These are from the brand Panadora. It's a Swedish brand. And so like here, let me pull one of these up. So Panadora. And I think these go for usually like $200, $250 maybe, somewhere around there. So here's Moonlight, a sweet gourmand, not off to a good start already, but plum, mandarin orange, chocolate, fruity notes, clove, peach, white chocolate, honey, cedarwood, tobacco, vanilla, amber, and musk. The guy's name is Ibrahim Al-Zubi, and I've never smelled anything but from this house, but look at this. Almost most of the entire sample set, basically. Only a handful missing. So, yeah, From what I was reading, a lot of people compare them to Xerjoff. Again, not a good start, but we'll see. We'll see what I think of Panadora. Like I said, I like the 3 ml sample set, but I told Rich about it, and I said they're probably going to be shite. I just have such low expectations for new fragrances nowadays. And Rich said, yeah, more to hate, that they gave you 3 mils instead of just 2. And then finally, the full bottle on the list. This is kind of cool. This is from a brand called Vice Parfums. And I've seen the guy. I think the guy may actually have a YouTube channel. I can't remember exactly. But if you look up Vice Parfums, Miami, his website is viceparfums.com. And Vice Parfums was started in 2022 by Joel Brown, a.k.a. Joel the Nose. That's his YouTube channel, Joel the Nose. I've maybe watched one of his reviews just kind of in passing. And so it says a Miami native, Joel is a fragrance reviewer, influencer, curator, painter, photographer, attorney, and indie perfumer. Okay. So he's like Better Call Saul kind of thing or something. But anyway, so limited edition, I think this already says it's sold out or whatever, but this one's called Super Suave, which is kind of a cool name. And I like the little paint thing on there. So we'll see. It's supposed to be electric energy of 80s Miami. I like 80s Miami. I like Vice. So I'm down. Super Suave, I like the name. It's kind of cool. Gray pine, cedar leather, and patchouli mirror the sleek and stylish architecture of the time. So I'm thinking like, something like Al Pacino and Scarface, maybe I should wear like a white suit when I do the review or something like that. The allure of 80s Miami. Anyways, so full bottle, Very kind of you. Thank you, my friend, my perfume god person. So if you guys know anything about like some of these Panadora or Vice Parfums or anything, do let me know. But yeah, so my comparison video of Tabarome Millésime and a very quick unboxing. So thanks to everyone. Glad I got to do this on the weekend. Always a pleasure when I get to put these videos out for you guys, especially with my crazy life nowadays. But as always, thank you. Love you guys. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.